Welcome to this episode of the Tower 26B Racer Podcast. I'm Jim Linkston here with Coach Jerry Rodriguez. Coach, how you doing, bud?
I'm good. How you doing today, Jim?
I'm going to speak like the Micro Machine guy. Remember the Micro Machine guy? We got so much to cover in this podcast, this episode, because as you know, this is your favorite part of the season. We're going to talk about your favorite part of the training season. We have too much to talk about for me to go into my whole Michael Buffer intro to you. Are you okay with that if we just move along?
Move it along. We can
I
get
spent
this
more.
done in 30 minutes.
No, we're gonna do. This is my time with you. I need at least an hour. But yeah, this is gonna be a fun one. I don't know where my head's at right now. It's just we're coming off the 2 p.m. call with our team. I have a lot going through my head right now. My neck, I got a big kink in my neck. I've been sleeping outside on a pool float for the last 2 weeks.
What
Yeah,
happened?
yeah.
What did the wife
The
do?
wife kicked me out. She's giving me an hour with the kids a week. But other than that, I'm sleeping in the backyard with the coyotes. This is what happened, and this is going to lead into our episode of today and what we're going to cover. First off, let me tell you guys, we're live on Facebook. You guys see my pearly whites, Jerry's pearly whites. If you guys have questions throughout the episode, write it in. Coach Megan is monitoring those questions. She's going to get them to us. We're going to answer them live, and if we think it's a good enough question, maybe we'll invite you guys onto the Zoom to see your beautiful face, and maybe you guys can ask live. But back to me, I got this kink in my neck, sleeping on this pool float in the backyard because 2 weeks ago, I'm in my pain cave here, letting the pain out in a bike interval workout. I'm hitting VO2 max. I think it was 4 minutes VO2 max effort. I'm in the thick of it. The door opens. My wife walks in and she starts talking to me about what color my daughter's dress is going to be on her preschool graduation day. Right. And I'm sweating. I'm huffing and puffing. I'm digging deep. I'm reaching to that next level, like I always tell our athletes to do. And in between breaths, I just say, read the room. I told my wife to read the room. I told my wife, my beautiful bride, to read the room. Her jaw dropped, hit the floor. I came in after the workout. All my stuff, the 3 things that I own was in the backyard.
And she said, read the room.
Read the room. Get your ass outside. Don't talk to my kids. I'll let you know when you can come back in. But if we want to learn from this experience, first off, respect your wife and don't speak to her like that. But second off, I was so in the flow. I was, you know me, I'm a good guy. I take care of people. I make sure I say the right things, or I say the right things, right? And I'm selling myself to everyone, including my wife. And I was so into the effort, so focused on what I was doing. I didn't think, Jer. I was in the state of flow. And I wasn't letting any distractions break that state of flow, including my beautiful bride. So
what did you learn out of this? What did you learn out of this?
Take care of your wife, and if that's gonna anything's gonna break your concentration, it's gonna be your wife. But I also said, if you're in that state of flow and you're mindful of the process, someone comes in and tries to break that. It's also a good thing. Nobody can break that concentration. I got one heck of a workout in, I'll tell you that much.
Let me help you out, buddy. Here's the easy answer. Lock the door.
And then, what would happen if the house is burning down and I couldn't get a hold of you? That's a whole different thing we're going down, Jared. But okay, so I was present. I was focused on the process. This episode is going to be all about being present and focus on the process, because we're going to talk about what's going to be the subject of this.
Hey, this is open water. This is the most important set of skills needed for triathlon swimming, right? I mean, at the end of the day, all the training you're doing in the pool, if you're doing it, hopefully there are, athletes are, then you need to be able to export that to open water. So it's the skills and the necessary demands for open water racing.
And if we're not present and focused on the process in our training, how are we ever going to
Can't.
parlay it? Exactly. So we're going to talk about all the skills that we work into our training day in and day out via our Tower 26 location swim program, as well as our subscription program, which athletes all around the world subscribe to. And we're going to talk about how we apply that on race day and show some examples of athletes applying those skills on race day. So, but before we get to that, what did we talk about last episode?
We caught up on a number of topics, Jim, but sort of the good, the bad, the ugly was basically some of the things that have been going on in the sport that are really good and provocative and so on, and then kind of the idiot, dumb things that some people do, and then the really next level idiot things. The ugly.
So we got a lot of great feedback after that episode. People like to hear that, controversial, some may say, but I would just say it's just,
Well, you know what?
good
One of
thinking.
we did talk about, it just came back to me. We did spend a fair segment of the episode talking about Ironman, half Ironman 70.3 Morro Bay with um, with the swim issue, right? Which parlays right into this particular episode with the demands of that swim, how challenging it was. And I ended up talking to the guy in charge of, I think, Ironman North America, and what they did and how they prepared for it and what they did after. And I mean, they had a pretty high DNF rate. Am I correct?
Oh yeah,
Fairly
man.
large.
What was it,
And how they
30%
handle
DNF?
that. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're making waves, buddy, and then they're making changes because of it. So good stuff.
Interestingly, you got to be careful what you ask for, right? Because we did that episode on Wednesday, a couple of Wednesdays ago, right?
Yep.
I hopped on a plane Thursday morning. I'm sorry, we did that episode on Tuesday. I hopped on a plane Wednesday morning, went to Kona 70.3, and guess what they did on the swim on Saturday?
Shortened it up
They shortened the swim.
because
They
the big
trimmed
dog was
the
there
swim.
watching.
Well, and it was one of those swims where I looked at it, I went, okay, this, again, it's discretionary, and I prefer you err on the side of caution. And was one of those, if I were race director, I'd have left the swim as it is. But they trimmed it, and it was like, okay, good.
They're gonna listen to this. We can't win. We can't win with Rodriguez. We just can't win with the guy. Hey, you're honest. You tell it like it is. And we appreciate that about you. That being said, let's get into some open water swim skills. That's what the masses are here to hear about. How do we practice what we encounter on race day? How are we going to practice that in the pool? And what are these skills? What does it entail?
Yeah.
Kind of how do we do it?
Well, I think let's back up and sort of put ourselves in the position of what we see, right? When athletes come to us and we ask them, okay, what are you doing, or how are you preparing for your next triathlon? What are the things you're actually doing in your workouts? And they say, well, you know what? It's my race is in 2 months, and I'm just going down to Long Beach, and I'm swimming once a week on a Sunday in the Long Beach Basin because that's where my race is going to be. And I'm doing the open water course there, or whatever I think the course is going to be. I'm getting my weekly open water swim in. That's sort of the standard. Folks think that, hey, if I'm going to swim in a race that's in open water, I should do an open water swim per week. Well, guess what? That's actually pretty smart thinking, but the skills that you need to acquire to be able to execute in open water, those skills need to be trained in a pool. They need to be overseen by Coach Jim or Coach Jerry or whomever to make sure you're doing the skills correctly so that you can then export proper skills to open water. So although the thinking is clever and smart and pretty much right on that they should go to Long Beach in this example and swim there once a week, you need to be practicing a couple other times in the pool, those exact same skills that you think you're doing correctly, which most people are not.
Why should we be doing it in the pool versus just going out to open water and practicing it?
But static environment, right? So controlled environment and oversight from your coach. So you can get to see what's being done. You can get feedback and so on. Because the most common mistakes are the lack of silkiness or the lack of comfort with sighting, how to sight, right? That is not executed really well by most folks. And so therefore, taking bad sighting skills, if you don't have good sighting skills and you don't develop those in the pool, what do you think they're going to look like in open water where you don't have a static environment? You have a very dynamic environment with could have chop, could have wind, could have a number of variables that make it much more demanding. So,
and what do you say to the athlete says, I don't want to do that in the pool. I'm going to look like an idiot amongst all the other swimmers? Because I hear that all the time.
Then do another friggin' sport. Why are you doing this sport then? You chose to do this sport. So, I mean, now you want to decide what you're going to look like. You already decided to wear spandex. So come on. Lycra or whatever you're wearing. So,
hey, I'll be the comedic relief. I was going to say that. You took my line. But no, I hear it all the time. Like, oh, people are looking at me during this, but you just put your head down and you focus on your specific task at hand.
Yeah, I mean, you're paying your several $100 for an entry in a race. What do you care what somebody else is thinking? I mean, you're there to do the best you can do.
But the thing is that we bring it back to that Morro Bay swim, right, where it was a 30% DNF rate. None of our athletes who we work with got pulled out of the swim or didn't finish that swim because we prepared for the demands of race day, whether it be a current, whether it be sighting, whether it be, race takeout, all this stuff that we're going to go over is stuff we do session after session after session. So it's built into their muscle memory, their mindful memory. So when they get in conditions like that, sure, it's challenging and it's hard, but we've put it through them session after session after session. They just go out there and they respond with, with execution.
Yeah. I think you mentioned it. I think we had 15 athletes at Morro, 15 completed the swim and completed the triathlon. I believe we only had 12 at 70.3 Kona, and all 12 obviously finished the swim. The swim was shortened. We were disappointed because it's a place where we can execute and show off ourselves. But Jason Smith, first in his age group, third overall in the swim. I mean, we had great swims. In fact, our Santa Barbara athletes, we had 6 athletes from Santa Barbara, where I've moved to in the last few years and been living. All 6 placed in the top 10 in their age group. On all 6, their swims were faster than their overall placing.
And
faster
we're not
placing, higher
we're
placing.
not just trying to pump us up and say we have all the answers, but
No,
we're
we are.
saying we practice. I mean, we practice the way we play, right? It's like we
Yes.
go out there, we plan for, we practice for success. We go out, we have success because of the way we approach these races. You prepare to fail, you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail, right? Isn't that the saying? Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. We prepare for success, and you see the success happen on race day. So it's just the way we approach.
Yeah, so let's start with the most important skill. I mean, we can go through. Let's go through a half a dozen of these things that I think are necessary for open water demands. Right, sighting, the obvious one. Race takeout speed, and we'll talk about what that means. Drafting or pace lining, close quarter swimming next to your, in very tight space around you. Buoy turns, how to turn a buoy, and then a transition into T1, what we call deck ups in our workouts, going from swimming to standing up, right, on running.
Yep.
So those are sort of a half a dozen quick little things we can go through here. So let's take them one by one, those 6. But let's start with the biggie, sighting. Single-handedly, the most important skill needed in open water. I'm going to give you an example. There's a gentleman called me from a referral a year or 2 ago from, remember Matt Dixon, the Purple Patch Matt that swam with us way back when, in the days from UCLA, right?
Yep, of course, yep.
So he was a referral, and he called up, his name slips me at the moment, but super nice guy, very, very good swimmer. Swam in college, and maybe in his late 30s, early 40s now, still swimming really fast, 105 pace per 100 in workouts, can swim 100s on a 110, swimming 105s. This is a front pack swimmer, right? This is translates those rep times in the pool into open water. He should be swimming a 24-minute half Ironman swim. Well, he was nowhere near to that, and they can't figure out what the problem was. Well, fast forward after a couple of quick little questions, I said, send me a video of you swimming, but I want you to, in that video, I just need 10 or 12 seconds. In that video, throw in 3 or 4 sights. Well, the sighting was terrible. It's really bad. So poor quality sighting, so it slowed him down quite a bit. He probably naturally, like most of us, naturally swims crooked. We all do, by the way. So he naturally swims crooked, and then he had technically poor sighting skills. So he slowed down tremendously. So his ability in the pool, he wasn't able to exercise that in a race. So when we learn sighting, it's not just a matter of learning to sight, it's a matter of learning to sight correctly. How do we sight correctly? So what do we teach? We teach what's called the lift, look, and breathe method. Lift, look, and breathe. That simply means you're going to lift your head as your arm is exiting the water. So if you are a right-sided breather, you breathe to your right, you will lift your head as your left hand is exiting the water. You've finished your swim pull with the left arm. The left hand exits the water, and it's making its recovery, what's called its recovery. It's revolution back to the front, half revolution back to the front. As that hand is returning back to the front, we're lifting the head, lifting the head, lifting the head, lifting the head. The head gets to its highest point when that left hand is just exactly how you're doing it there, when the left hand is just about entering the water. That's the highest point of the head position. And then that's where you capture your sight, and then you turn to your right to breathe after that. It's called a lift, look, and then turn to breathe. And you capture the breath in your normal breathing side with your normal technique of breathing. The biggest mistake we see is people breathe and then try to lift their head immediately after, and that's not what we want to do. Water polo style sighting, I don't believe in it. It's great for elite swimmers. It's not so good for non-elite swimmers. So let's teach the more effective and silky method. Lift, look, and breathe. Right-sided breathers, as your left arm is recovering and coming towards the front, that's when you're lifting. Left-sided breathers, as your right hand is finished swimming, exiting the water and coming around and back to the front, that's when you're lifting. Now remember, all of this is taking place in tenths of a second. each 10th of a second that the hand's coming around, the head's lifting a little higher. Another 10th of a second, the head's lifting a little higher. Another 10th of a second, head lifting a little higher. It gets to its high point right about as your hand is entering the water. Here's the problem. Too many coaches, and I just reviewed this from something, let's leave the organization nameless for the purpose, or should we beat up on them? Well, what do we do here?
Beat up on them. Come on. Just know to look out for it.
At whatever they call the exchange, what is the
Endurance exchange.
The endurance exchange last year, some coaches are talking about alligator sighting. Do not do alligator sighting. Alligator sighting does not work in open water, okay? Alligator sighting is a beautiful thing to do in a pool where you have lane lines and the water is placid, flat, it's static, non-dynamic. What are alligator eyes? Alligator eyes simply are when you lift your eyes right above the water level, just the eyeballs lifting above the water level. Jim, if you lifted your eyeballs right above the water level and the water is completely flat, there's not a ripple in it, you'll be able to see, right? Now let's have 2 inches of ripple, just 2 inches. That's just a little finger splash.
No way.
Needless to say, if we have any sort of wave motion that you get once the first set of 10 or 20 swimmers go off, there's no longer placid water, right?
Oh, no, it's a washing machine.
Exactly. So there is no learning to do alligator sighting. This is an ineffective method because you're not really training yourself to lift your head high enough. In fact, the question is, how high should you be lifting your head? You should be lifting your head high enough where your mouth just about clears the water. But you're not taking your breath there.
Check this out. So I got an example of this is a pro women's race. I believe it's at Texas. I believe it was Texas. But if you look at this, I mean, just look at what the best are doing. Like lift, look, breathe, right? And you barely can tell, as she's lifting her head up, there's no hitch in the stroke or anything. She looks up, lift, look, breathe, and you can barely tell how it's ingrained into the stroke. So that's how fluid we want it. And that comes with practice. We do it in the pool. We practice. We ingrain it into the stroke. So when we get on there race day, it's just as we saw there, it's just second nature.
Yes. And it's a high head lift. It's not alligator eyes. Okay. That is not what we want to do. So tear that page out of the book. Discard looking at that video on YouTube. That is not what you want to practice. Now, if your race is in a pool and you have your own lane to swim in, it would work there. Yep. But most of our races are not in swimming pools, right?
Look at what the best are doing. You look at the athletes at the tip of the spear, how they're working in. They're all lift, look, breathe, and just they work it into the stroke flawlessly.
Okay. Now, it's a matter of repetition, frequency, practice. So this needs to be built into your training sessions, into your main swim sets. Why the main swim sets? Because you need to put some stress on. So you learn the skill, you burn the skill, which means you repeat it over and over, right? And then you build the skill into your training sessions. What do we teach for open water? We want our athletes to be able to sight at a minimum once every 10th stroke. So that's right arm is 1, left arm 2, right arm 3, left arm 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, sight on number 10. That's your minimum. In racing, I like to see every 6th stroke sighting. Constant data inputs. And if you're very skilled like you are, this has no impact on performance, 0 whatsoever. And you're also taking in always a lot of data of who's around you, especially at the lead end, the pointy end. This is very important for those athletes. So minimum every 10th, every 6th is ideal. Now, what decides 10, 8, 6, 4, 2? Well, really conditions, right? If you have super choppy conditions, we're going to sight more frequently. We might even be sighting every 4th stroke. Super choppy conditions. If you have very placid conditions, there's no wind and there's a lot of space between your competitors and you happen to be really lucky with flat water, then you can go to every 10, every 12 perhaps. And I tried it, by the way, when I was in Kona. I tried to swim 20 strokes without taking a sight. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. It felt too awkward. I felt I'm going off course.
No, you didn't know where you're going. It's like swim with your eyes closed.
I don't have any confidence.
Yeah, you can't tell where you're going when your eyes are looking straight down. There's no line down there to look at. You got to see where you're going. So practice in the pool, frequency, work it in the stroke. If you watch the last Olympics, I think it's Alistair Brownlee. I think he was sighting every stroke, but you couldn't even tell. It just was ingrained into how he was moving. So that's what we want, just fluidity. If you need to look up, you don't even think. It's just second nature. So that's
And,
how we want it worked into your session. So you get out there on race day and it's just built into that muscle memory.
and if you don't have a group to swim with and no one to review it, get the local lifeguard at the pool, whatever it may be, get some friend to come with you, videotape you, video record, and then play back, look at it to see how you're doing. You want the lift, look, and breathe, and it needs to be silky.
So
Do we have our video that we can show
I'll find it, but
from our subscription program?
let's move on to I got it somewhere, but let me move on to the next skill. While I'm bringing that up, I'll show that video, but I just want to show some race like stuff. What's the next skill that we cover with athletes?
Well, let's talk about race takeout speed. Is it really a skill? Well, it's an acquired performance enhancement, right? Skill. It's being able to start fast and not completely blow up. And why do we practice this? How many races have you been to, Jim, at the start line, either with athletes next to you or your athletes telling you, or other athletes saying, I'm just going to start easy. I'm going easy. I'm in training much. I'm going to start off easy and hold back.
Every single race, someone says that.
And then when they start off, what do?
Take it out as hard as they can.
They all take it out as hard.
Exactly.
Very
every
hard.
Time.
It's sort of difficult. So if we're going to be building, if we're going to have elevated heart rates at the beginning, excuse me, let's build that into our training sessions. Example, if you're doing, let's make up a set, 8 times 200. Well, let's put it out in minutes. 8 times 3 minutes, a 3-minute swim. So that might be a 300 for somebody. It might be a 250 for somebody else, a 200, a 150, might even be a 100 for somebody. 8 times 3-minute efforts with 45 seconds rest in between. Well, perhaps the first 30 seconds of that 3-minute effort, you're going to go at high octane. We're going to go at 90% of maximum heart rate, first 30 seconds. And then you back down into your, whatever the set design calls for, 75%, 80% effort, whatever it might be. But the front portion, the first portion, high octane performance. So building it in, having adaptation to it, race takeout speed. And of course, you should throw in your sighting, right?
Yeah, and that, you gotta practice the way you play. You're not just gonna take a race takeout and swim with your eyes closed. You got to look at where you're going, right?
Yes.
So let's show this quickly. Let me show a race takeout example. This is the pro race from, maybe it was one of the Australian Ironmans, but this is extreme, because this is the tip of the spear. But you want to talk us through this? You watch this, they go, and this is example what it looks like. Multiply this by 2,000. This is the age group start, and these guys are hammering, right? This is what you see every single race. Big effort to start, and then how soon after they take it out do they settle down into more of an 80% effort at the Ironman distance?
Probably for most folks, after 90 seconds, 2 minutes, they're settling in. But look at that start. Everyone's in pretty close quarters, and that's another skill we're going to talk about. But everyone's pretty jumbled up there in the very beginning. But here's an Ironman race, 8 hours at the pointy end for your elite athletes, 15, 16 hours for your finishing athletes, and anywhere in between for everybody else. These guys are going at pretty high octane output, right, to start off. So if we're going to do that on race day, let's practice that in our training sessions. That's the bottom line of it. Plus, it also gives you better positioning, and it puts you in the opportunity to be able to draft effectively.
That's right. All right, what's the next skill?
Well, let's just talk about exactly what that race showed. A whole bunch of people bunched into close quarters. Now, Ironman has done a good job lately in the last few years of having 2-person starts or 3-person starts going off every 3 to 5 seconds, whatever it may be. So the start's a little bit more comfortable. But if you're doing Olympic distance races, like what we'll see coming up in Paris, we're going to see whatever the quantity, I'm not sure the number at the start line, probably 60 to 75 athletes in the start line, all diving off the pontoon together, going all out in the first couple of minutes. So close quarter swimming, you need to practice it if this is going to be some of the experiences you're going to have on race day. There's nothing comfortable about it whatsoever. In fact, it's highly uncomfortable. So we need to practice. I think you're frozen there. We need to practice being or adapting to that discomfort, right? How do we become familiar with the discomfort? We're not going to become this thing of, I'm going to become comfortable with uncomfortable. There's no such thing. You'll become familiar with that discomfort. Okay, so practicing something over and over.
Time, oh God, this guy kicked me in the face. I wanted to go punch the guy, but no one means to kick you in the face. Everyone's in such tight quarters with limbs flying everywhere, moving at that race takeout effort. No one needs to punch or kick anybody. It's just when everybody's in that small space, things are flailing and people get hit. It's not
Right.
meant to happen, but the more you're familiar with that feeling, the more you're going to be able to execute your specific race. So how do we practice something like this in the pool?
And to your point, your job is to look for open spaces or to create the opportunity for that not to happen, right? So how do we practice it in the pool? We get a handful of our athletes that are similar ability. We put them in a lane together, 3 or 4 in a lane, and we swim together. So you get very familiar swimming 3 or 4 people abreast in a lane side by side, having contact. And we start doing that at a slow speed, and then we increase the speed and increase again until you're going at a pretty high octane. And then we'll do that with a layer in front. So you'll have 3 or 4 people in front, 3 or 4 people in a second row, and then we'll add another 3 or 4 people in a third row. Point is, we're trying to get a whole bunch of people around in close quarters, swimming together, learning to get familiar with this feeling. And important, we need to move people around. Excuse me. Meaning, you can't just say, hey, I'm going to be on the right side only because I know I got the lane line right there, right? Well, yes, but on race day, you might end up getting caught between 2 people. So make sure you're not only on the right side, you get in the center sometimes, and then you get on the left side because you want to get comfortable, familiar with as familiar as you can with all different positions, right,
Yep.
center, left, one body length back, that type of thing.
Yep.
So
All right.
build it in to the training sessions with sighting again, right? With
Yep.
sighting.
So what
with
about
race takeout speed?
So race takeout speed with sight and close quarter swimming, but also getting on people's feet is very unfamiliar too. Like, oh my God, I was hitting their feet every time. What about pace line and drafting? Is that something we need to be working on too?
Absolutely. So that should be built into your training session. So get a buddy or two. Three or more is ideal. 2 is not quite enough. But if you can only have 2, that's fine. But you want 3 or 4, similar speed, and learn to do drafting where you're sitting in somebody's feet. Because you also learn how to conserve energy smartly, sitting right in the wake of your athlete. Okay. And many times we don't realize this until you actually come side by side with someone and you realize, oh man, I'm not sure I can sustain this effort side by side. Let me drop back, get on the feet. I'm going the same speed on the feet. My output's just lower. My heart rate's lower. I'm more managed, right?
Yeah, I mean, I say that all the time with our athletes going in the race day. If you get on someone's feet and you just feel like you're not working hard enough, and then you try and go and pass that athlete in the water and you can't get past them, that means you're swimming the same speed. You're just saving that much energy. So get back on those feet.
Right. Now, the ideal position, the draft from a performance standpoint is on the hip, right? Right on somebody's hip. The thing is that gets in pretty tight quarters, and some folks don't like that. They may push you away, or they'll try and get away from it. But if you can get to that hip position and sit there, that's very helpful. Now, we have to be mindful, though. We can talk about drafting and how on its benefits, but drafting becomes less and less significant the slower and slower the athlete. So the slower the speed, the less the benefit for 2 reasons. Why? You're just going slower, so the pull along or the suck along is much less. And secondly, drafting off a slower person, which is generally a less skilled athlete, they're probably going to swim crooked also. So we want to make sure that if we're going to be drafting and we know we're a 145 to 2-minute, 2:15 per 100 swimmer, yards or meters, doesn't matter. If you're in that range and you're drafting, make sure you're doing your own sighting because that person is likely slightly less skilled than the 130 athlete or the 115 athlete or the 1-minute athlete per 100.
Well, even when we're in the pool practicing our pace on our drafting, we always have the people that are in the draft sighting, maybe a little less frequently than the leader of the lane, but you're still working that sighting into the stroke. And if you look at that example I used earlier, you can see how the women are using that draft to their advantage to pull along to the finish of the swim there. And you say, I mean, that second swimmer could be working 30% less than the first swimmer just by being pulled along on the feet of that first swimmer.
Exactly, and it gives the opportunity of someone who is not quite as good of an athlete. There's several minutes to be made with effective drafting. Okay, providing you've trained race takeout speed, so you can get on the feet of people that are faster. So there's a training effect that needs to occur to be able to utilize effective drafting. It just so all of these skills that we're going through, you need to practice all of them if you want to optimize the opportunity for your best performance for you. Okay. At the elite end, the guys and girls that are going to the Olympic Games, they really have to hone in on all of these skills. I mean, they've got to be sharpened up tremendously.
All right. So one of my favorite ones that we practice is deck ups. What's the benefit of doing deck ups, and how do you do that?
All right. So that's for the end of the swim, right? So let's back up. Could we just do buoy turns and we sort of do this in order?
Do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So buoy turns. What happens at a buoy turn? We have all different sort of degrees of turns. You could have a turn that's fairly obtuse, that is maybe a 130 degrees, a turn that's 120 degrees, and then you have a 90-degree turn. And then sometimes you even have almost a very sharp, almost U-turn turns. So we have to be able to practice all different angles of turns. To have effective turns, we need to set those up ahead of time in a race. Because again, we come back to familiarity. If you don't have a high comfort level with a lot of people around you, you may want to decide, or you should decide, everybody should be deciding ahead of getting to the buoy, some period of time ahead of getting to the buoy. And that period of time varies depending on one's ability level, but some period of time before getting to the buoy. So let's, for this example, use 30 seconds out, 30 seconds to a minute out from the buoy. You should be setting up your position. Do you want to be on the inside position, in the middle, providing that you're with a group of athletes, or on the outside position? And if you're somebody who's sort of by nature more sort of gentler, and you don't want to get into the scrum, and you don't want to get into the aggressiveness, then you set yourself up for a wider turn. Be in the outside position. So if you're making a right-hand turn and there's 3 people abreast, you'd be the furthest left person. If you're making a left-hand turn and you want to be gentler in the approach, you'll take the furthest right position. And that way you're out of a lot of contact, or there'll be less contact, right? Now the turn would take you a bit longer to execute because you're not as tight in the turn, right? It would be like running on a track, running in the inside lane versus running on the outside lane. Right, Jim?
So you're saying set up the turn way before
Set up your
get into the
position.
turn. Now, here's the deal, because you might be with other swimmers, but when we go to an Ironman event, a half Ironman event, that turn tends to be where swimmers congregate. Weaker swimmers or swimmers who aren't prepared for the race congregate, or who need a little break. They stay right on that turn. So it's not only thinking about where your fellow swimmers are, but you're sighting that turn and you're seeing, okay, there's people waiting in the water, hanging onto that buoy. I got to go a little wider. You're not going to run right into those people. So exactly what you're saying, you got to use your sighting to find a line that you're going to take around that buoy. And it might have to be wider because there's a ton of people just waiting at the buoy. We've all seen it in these Ironman races. People just, for some reason, they stop at the buoy, they just hang out there. So you have to, like you're saying, you got to be sighting that buoy and anticipating where you're going to need to go based on other swimmers, but also based on what's going on at the buoy at that time.
Yes. So this all needs to occur ahead of time. You got your athletes that are at the pointy end of the thing. It's probably one of the most important skills for you to learn, because you need to have super fast turns or super effective turns where you don't give up too much, right? And you generally want to try to get the inside position if you can.
And we spoke about this on our 2 p.m. call. Jack had a great example, a video example. I didn't get it from him, but when you're going into a turn, what's the best way to make that turn? Do you lead with your hips? Do you lead with your feet? What do you do to make your around that buoy?
I mean, there are 2 or 3 ways to have effective turns. I mean, the thing that gets talked about, which ended up being talked about on our call, was this corkscrew turn that I'm not a big fan of.
No, don't even talk about the corkscrew. No,
but I think it is worth talking about, because as Jack said, there's a comfort to it, right? There's sort of an elegance to it, and it's for the person that wants a more gentler turn. It's fine to sort of flip over onto your back and then roll onto that side as you're making a turn, and that's fine. If you want a faster turn, you're basically going to be hugging that buoy as tightly as you can. The arm that's close to the buoy is sort of leading the way, leading that. In this case, you're demonstrating your left arm up front. You're making a left turn. Your left arm is sort of angling the way of the turn that you want to make, and then the right arm is swimming, and you're arching your back for a quick, tight turn. The tightest and fastest turns are actually beneath the surface, where you sort of dive beneath the buoy. You're almost at the cord line, and you're beneath the surface. But that's at the pretty elite end of things, where you can hold your breath and that type of thing. You have to be careful about that type of thing.
So how do you practice the buoy turns outside?
You got to do it in
of
workout.
racing?
You have to do it in workout. bring buoys to the swim pool, stick it in the pool, take out the lane lines, and have your athletes practice them in the pool.
Practice
It's
in the
it's
pool.
that simple. So we come back to the same thing. All these skills are practiced in workout.
Yep.
And then
That's
we're acquiring these skills. Now we have these tools, and then we take them to that environment at Long Beach in the example earlier on, and you export those skills there, as opposed to showing up at Long Beach with no skills and saying you're going to try to acquire them in open water. Not the place to do it.
okay. So we talked about sighting. We talked about practicing. Race takeout efforts, drafting, pace lining, close
Yes.
quality swimming, buoy turns. Last one that we're going to cover here is deck ups and how that is going to affect our transitions.
Right. And the reason we do deck ups, I remember an athlete coming wants to swim with us, a fairly well-known athlete, and she refused to do deck ups, said that these are the worst things that she's ever seen, and refused to do it in the workout. So I thought, well, one, why did you come here to swim with us? And this is what we're known for. And her swim continues to be very poor, okay, for a very elite athlete, elite in the sense that she wins races in her age group, and she has a very poor swim. So what are deck ups? Deck ups are learning to transition from being horizontal for whether it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour and a half, to being vertical and then having to run, right? Yep. This is all we're doing is simulating race day simulation. So if we don't practice these in our sessions and you show up on event day, what happens? What have you seen, Jim, as a coach, standing on the sideline when athletes get done with a swim? And the longer the swim, the worse it is. They get done with a swim, Ironman swim. Let's make it a worst case scenario. And they haven't practiced this and they stand up to run. What happens?
Either they walk slower than a snail's pace, or they might actually even fall over.
They wobble over. Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of fallovers, wobbly legs, and so on. So we have to practice this. It's another part of the training. It's swim, bike, run, 3 sports integrated into one. But in between those 3 sports, you have 2 transitions. So practicing these transitions, or what occurs, is what we have to do. So we build these in, as Jim's showing this video here. If you can actually expand that, if it's possible.
I'll try, but we build it in. Go keep talking while I figure this out.
Yeah, you build it into your training sessions. Example, 1 times a 10-minute swim. Every 100, at the end of every 100, you would immediately climb out of the pool and then turn around and dive back in. If your pool doesn't allow diving, you jump back in and you push off the wall. So you climb out immediately. It's a heart rate spike. You jump back in, you swim the next 100, hit the wall, climb back out immediately, jump back in or dive back in. We do these, and that's what we start with. And then we advance to where we integrate 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds of running in between, if your facility allows it. If it doesn't allow it, then you jog on the pool deck. You just stand up right above the lane. Here's, Jim, you're showing our athletes exiting the water and running around the bleachers. Now, we build this into our pool contracts with the cities so we can have running, because generally most pools, there's no running on a pool deck, right?
Yep. So
and here, so this is all about adaptation, gets built in, and then guess what? We start our open water training season. They go to the beach and execute this flawlessly, or with certainly a lot more comfort. So we have typically very good transitions, at least at T1.
But it takes time to adapt to this, like you can't just go and start doing it. You need to slowly build up those deck ups, get the feel for what it is to run out of the water. We don't run right away. We just deck up. We dive back in, and we do that for a couple of weeks, and then we add some running into it. So it's a progression, and it takes time to progress into it.
And it's a specific adaptation. But the real benefit, there's a massive benefit of doing deck ups in addition to just the transition of standing up to running, and that is, in any dynamic environment, so you have your static environment in the pool. In a dynamic environment, we need more power. You need to be stronger, and you need more power. Deck ups are a great way to also build power. What does it look like at the beginning when we start off the first 2 or 3 weeks of deck ups? What do our athletes look like?
Oh, I carry them out of the pool in a wheelbarrow.
Yeah, wobbly weevils almost, right? Yeah, I mean, you're pushing up, you can barely get out. The triceps are weak, the pec muscles are weaker, and then half a dozen times, 10 times later, doing this after 3 weeks, big adaptation. You see those pop-ups occurring quicker and quicker and quicker. So you're also building some good specific strength and power.
And then you see a race like example here, Emma Kate, right? Kansas 70.3 coming out. One of our swimmers, Emma Kate, right? You're co-author of your book,
yes,
Jerry.
That's right. Yes.
Coming out, doesn't skip a beat, runs right up that ramp, just as quick as she's going to go run the half marathon later in the day as she's running, gets the wetsuit down. All this stuff is because she prepared for race day, right? She can move through her heart. She knows her heart rate's going to be skyrocketing, but she's done so many deck ups with us in preparation for this race. She could just keep moving through transition without stopping, without skipping a beat, having to catch her breath because of everything she does in preparing for this race. And this transition is probably from the minute she gets out of the water to the minute she exits transition, less than 2.5 minutes.
And I
So
remember when Emma Kate and Holly Lawrence, two Brits, came and joined us, and these are good swimmers to start off. They had great difficulty in these workouts. You remember?
oh yeah, definitely, yeah, for sure. But and these are two top caliber athletes. But you notice it's not only just getting out of the water and running; it's completing all these tasks under the stress of going from that horizontal to vertical position. Stripping the wetsuit down, putting the helmet on, grabbing the bike, running out the other way, putting her shoes on. All this stuff happens because she prepared correctly and knew what it was going to feel like running out of the water.
I've never seen this video. This is good.
Well,
She looks like she was out of the water first, was she?
Yeah. Oh yeah, she won this race.
Yeah.
2013. Well, there you go. So that's a real world example of someone who's done our program and just hasn't skipped a beat. It doesn't skip a beat in transition, makes every second count, because we got to remember it's not only swimming, biking, running. Transition goes into that overall time, and if we're burning seconds in transition, that's seconds that we're taking away from our PR, podium time we could be gaining on. Maybe we might be a slower swimmer like me. That's something that I was always last out of the water, but I knew every second counted in transition. So if I was one of the fastest athletes in transition, I can make up for that deficit in the swim. Maybe make up for 10 seconds per 100 that I was slower than somebody because I was that much faster in transition.
And then in the next episode, Jim, let's talk a little bit about the value of wetsuits and how athletes should be practicing with wetsuits and what you need to do before your first race, because that is a component of that's necessary to address.
Yeah,
especially beginners.
That's for sure. But I want to get into one of the workouts that we subscribe for our athletes here. As our workouts of the episode, go to coaching.tower26.com for more examples here. And actually, next week we're going to open up all the workouts to our listeners and to the public to go try a Tower 26 workout. So if you go to coaching.tower26.com, we will have the workouts open so you could access those workouts and try them out just by going to the website. So go to coaching.tower.
Okay,
yeah, we're going to do that. And I will, I'll send out a reminder. So join our mailing list on tower26.com, and I'll send out a reminder to everybody on that mailing list and to how to access these workouts so you can try it for yourself. So we'll have the C session, the 2A sessions, and our B session all accessible to all of our listeners and all of our athletes who want to partake in these. But
and what Jerry, about our local workouts?
Our local workouts for anybody in the Southern California area at Santa Barbara, Pacific Palisades, and El Segundo will be open to all comers. So anyone who wants to come try a Tower 26 workout out, you are more than welcome.
Last week of June.
Last week of June, we'll have access to all of our subscription plan workouts at coaching.tower26.com, as well as all our local workouts for our Tower 26 athletes. But let's show an example of a workout we do to integrate all these skills into one workout. This was our B session from last week. Remember, every week we have 2 A sessions, a B session, and a recovery C session given in this subscription plan. But here's an example of what we did last week for our B session. As I just said, Jerry, you want to lead?
No, why don't you go ahead? I did a lot of talking just now.
I've been talking for the last hour.
Okay. I'll go if you want.
So we have a nice, easy warm up. Obviously, we have a little technique stuff worked into it with some fins, some kicking, but then we get into the meat of the workout where we start with the deck ups. And if you notice, we have it varies on level, right? So we have anywhere from a 600 to an 800, depending on your level. Level 1 is your most experienced swimmers. We go all the way down to a level 4, which is your newer swimmers or your swimmers who don't have as much experience. So it's a straight swim, but what we're doing in between each 100 is we're decking up, getting out of the pool. We're running for 10 to 15 seconds. As you saw in that video example, we run around a set of bleachers. You could run in place. You could run and touch a wall like they do down in El Segundo and dive back in or jump back into the pool. Just be safe running. We don't want you to slip and fall, but we want to get that movement in there. Notice that are also adding sighting into each length, right? We're sighting 2 times per 25 the entire way through. So if you're in a 25-yard pool, that's 2, 4, 6, 8 sightings per 100. Multiply that by an 800. In this case, that's 64 sightings over the course of an 800. If you have a 600, you're doing a little shorter distance. That's still a darn a lot. I can't do math, Jerry, but that's a lot of sightings for anyone doing this. We're working that into our stroke. And then we're also getting a little faster with each, right? So you got to start nice and easy, build effort every 100, making sure you're getting that deck up, run, dive back in, and you'll realize, hey, you know what? I can keep swimming as that heart rate fluctuates up and down based on where I'm at, diving in, getting back into your swim stroke. So you realize you can stay with that effort, and the heart rate does become drop a little bit as you get into that swim stroke.
And that's
From that,
important because you're practicing some heart rate variability there, right? That deck up, that heart rate spike adds on those
yeah.
extra 10 beats, and then you jump back in or dive back in, get a little recovered. Yep.
So you finish around 80, 85%. So you got to make sure you take it out nice and easy, nice and relaxed, so you can build every 100 there. Take a little break after that. Then we get into the main set. And this is where you guys want some friends. We can work the pace sliding, we work sighting, we work race takeout effort, we work some higher intensity efforts. So we're really ingraining everything into this main set where we have the pace line. And Jerry, what if you don't have a partner on something like this? What do you do?
So in this case, in this example, we have 6 times 100 here. So it'll be 6 times 100 for level 1 swimmers, 5 times 100, or 4 times 100 as an example for the different speeds. You would, and the way we have this design, Jim, as you can see, is you sight 2 times per 25 the whole way. If you're leading and if you're drafting, you sight 1 time per 25. But if you don't have a partner, what we would do is have you swim that first 50 at high octane, right? Sighting 2 times per 25, and then we'd have you back down the second 50 at 80, 85%, just sighting 1 time per 25. So we have you vary efforts if you don't have a partner, vary effort within each 100.
But everything we spoke about in the main meat of the workout, the main meat of this podcast is in this main set. You know, we already did the deck ups. You have race takeout effort. You have draft line. You have drafting. You have pace line. You have sighting. It's all included here, you know, so we're really practicing with the way we're going to play. And you notice we're doing this 2 times through. You do a 400 or a longer swim, approximately a 5-minute swim after the set of 6 by 100. Why do we do that pull after the 6 by 100, Jerry?
Especially at the beginning of learning the skill of sighting. Sighting is highly disruptive to most folks' swim mechanics. So you're practicing something new, you start making technical mistakes, or it punctuates your technical mistakes. So I want to make sure before we go sight again, or after we finish doing a sighting exercise, I want to get some quiet down mechanics and get things back in order. So
Just
we
relax.
use this exactly.
Yep. Relaxed, easy effort. Then we go back into the 6 by 100 again. So you're under some fatigue. You've already hit some intensity. Now it takes some really mindful execution, so your stroke doesn't fall apart. You stay on top of that effort. You keep the sighting fluid. So you really have to dial into the mental side of things the second round, because that fatigue has been building. Get back on another nice 400 easy swim after you hit 6 of those, or 5 or 4, depending on your level. And then talk about where we're finishing with these fast efforts. Why are we doing that, Chair?
You know, at the end of workouts, I like to do just fast efforts. I think it's a way to keep and we do them for very short distances. So it's a way to make sure you try to keep your focus in place with high fatigue, right? Because it's really easy. And we're all going to have high fatigue during a race. So let's practice while being under fatigue that we can stay focused, stay on target with what we want to do.
And what I do with swimmers in this instance is I put 2 or 3 swimmers in a lane, so they get a little more close quarter swimming. They do 1 length at a time, 3 at a time, so they're used to swimming next to each other at higher output efforts. So you can do that if you have a few friends you can share a lane with, or just grab the lifeguard and say, "Hey, jump in and go close quarter swimming." Easy swim to finish it off, cool down, but there's a lot in that one, Jared. That's both physically and mentally demanding on that swim.
Yeah, a bunch of 25s at the end, but we did give some recovery. I think it was every 3rd or 4th one. But high octane with some sighting. Yeah.
Beautiful. So go to coaching.tower26.com. Like I said, we'll open up all the workouts next week, starting with Monday's workout, which is, I don't know, whatever next Monday. What's next Monday?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So Jim, I do want to say, whenever we go through our 5 phases, each phase, I'm excited to start each phase because it's a new teaching opportunity for us, right, as coaches. So I get really geared up for each phase, but this is my most, but I think this is the phase I get the most excited about. This is the phase where, in fact, if you could only swim with Tower 26 for 3 months a year, these are the 3 months, because this incorporates speed training, endurance training, open water skill building, all the things we were just talking about in this podcast, and the training and the oversight and open water. This is it. This is condensing everything down. This is the cliff notes, right?
Exactly. Prepare for success. You want success, you got to do the work, and this is the work. So that was a really fun one to coach too. It was great to see people, limping out of the pool after that one because they worked their tails off. All right, coaching at tower26.com. Go there, start your account, and you will have access to those workouts next week. We got one question via Facebook. I'm not sure who it's from, but where exactly, thanks to Coach Megan for sending this in, where exactly do you want to be in the hip drafting positions? Have a race takeout effort, you get on somebody's hip. Are your hands at the hip? Is your head where are you supposed to be to get the maximum benefit from that hip drafting? Do you know
Head
the
at the
answer?
hip. Yeah.
Head at
Head in the thigh hip area, and as close as you can get.
as close as you can get. All right, beautiful. Well, that's the question we have. What are we going to talk about next episode, Jer? We talked about a lot here, so.
Well, let's continue this on and go into wetsuit usage, the types of wetsuits to buy, what you should be getting, what you should do when you get a new wetsuit, how to break it in, all those types of beginner questions. How much should I spend for a wetsuit? That type of thing. And that's a big one, right?
I think how to swim in a wetsuit too.
How to
I get a
swim in it,
lot of
correct.
issues with athletes who put on a wetsuit and they don't know how to swim. So I think that's a big part of it. So let's get into that on the next episode. A lot of good info here. Remember, coaching@tower26.com. If you have any questions for us, write in contact@tower26.com. We'll get those questions answered. Anything else from you, Jer?
No, this was a good one. This is good detail info. And if folks would I want to encourage you to practice these things in every workout this summer.
Yeah.
Every
And
workout.
if you
That's
have
how you get good at
questions,
something.
if you have questions, don't feel free to write in. That's what we're here for. We're here to answer these questions. So write contact@tower26.com or just comment on the YouTube video and we get those questions answered. So thanks a lot for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Coach Megan to be on the ones and twos over on Facebook, sending those questions to us. And for Jerry Rodriguez, Jim Vinsky, the Tower 26 Be Racer podcast. Thanks for listening.